The following is a special presentation on AZTV 7.
Welcome to Before You Vote. I'm Mike Broomhead. This AZTV special program is here to help you, the voter, understand the 2022 midterm election. We'll be talking with candidates and data analysts to give you insight into who and what is on the ballot. Today, it's all about the Senate debate. We'll be talking about the big moments everyone is talking about and where the candidates stand after the debate. It's going to be a breakdown of everything that's happened. Joining me today is political strategist Chuck Coughlin and Rod McLeod. We're going to show you the moments you may have missed, plus you'll hear from experts about how the debate went and how it's going to affect what's happened. We'll be back here in exactly 60 seconds. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Talking about the debate that happened with the Senate candidates, we bring in the big guns, starting with Chuck Coughlin from High Ground and Rod McLeod from Radar Strategies. And for full disclosure, you are working on the Kelly campaign as a consultant.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but let's talk about what happened in the debate between Senator Mark Kelly and Blake Masters. Let's start with the quality of the debate. As far as mudslinging goes versus substance, opinions, was it pretty substantive, or were there some mudslinging you wish didn't happen?
Well, I think Blake came in hard on the attack. That's kind of the role you expect of a challenger. I feel like he didn't often get underneath the 30,000-foot view, and I thought that Mark did. So I wouldn't say it was a dirty, ugly debate, but I was hoping for a little bit more of a substantive exchange. And then, of course, you had a third candidate up there, Marc Victor, the Libertarian, who sometimes got substantive, but also sometimes comic relief.
So before, I want to hear your comment, boys, since you brought it up. Do either of you think there was a substantial difference made by having the Libertarian candidate there? Do you think either candidate benefited from him being there?
Yeah, I'd say that probably Mark benefited from him being there. Libertarians tend to express views that are more in kind with Republicans, and I believe his presence there, because nobody really knew about him.
Right.
And so it really elevated his presence. I thought he was hysterical. I enjoyed the give and take that he had. He did a good job. And so I suspect if he's going to detract from anybody, it's end up taking votes away from Masters, but on the margins. I mean, we're talking small.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
So it sounded to me a little bit, from what I heard, I was listening while I was driving, that he agrees more, I would say the Libertarian candidate agreed more fiscally with the policies of Blake Masters and Republicans. But on social issues, they're more of a none of your business, stay out of it. And right. I think that would align more with the Democratic candidate. Is that true?
Yeah. No, that's where Libertarians come down. That's the intellectual divide they run the gamut on. Why they can't be successful, because they're riding the rail between these two issues, and they're not a major party, so they don't get a lot of attention.
So let's go back to the substance.
Yeah.
Are you in agreement on the substance issue?
Yeah, no, I thought it was, I didn't think there was really any mudslinging. I thought, like you said, Blake went at him hard on immigration and on the economy to start with, but I expected that. I didn't think there was anything unfair, untoward about what he did. There was no personal, attacks that didn't go below the belt at any point in time. And I was actually quite pleased. Governor Symington called me today and he said, I thought it was a pretty good debate. What do you think? And I said, yeah, I thought it was a pretty good debate too. It was good for voters to hear.
Because both of you live in this world of campaigns and candidates, do you believe that there is still value in a debate last night? Do you think that, because people are talking about moving away from debates, do you think they're still necessary and valuable?
I think it's absolutely valuable. People, sometimes you hear the phrase Lincoln-Douglas debate, and no one really knows what did that mean in a world before, forget television, before radio. You would go and sit on the side of a hill, and the first guy would speak for an hour. Then the second person would come up and speak for an hour and a half, so they have time to rebut the first person and give their own presentation. And the first guy would come back and speak for a half an hour to rebut. I mean, we are no longer in an attention span world of TikTok where people can give you 3 hours like that. But I think an exchange of ideas, people are hungry for talk. That's why people watch your show. So I think we need to find ways to have people have serious conversations, to engage in the issues, and to listen to one another and consider other people's point of view.
Well, and I thought Simons, the moderator, did a great job. You know, he wasn't constrained by some script. He was actually engaged in the discussion, and he actually riffed on some things as the debate moved along. He took advantage and created questions where that followed the line of the discussion.
Do both of you agree that when you saw that you think he did a good job of pushing back or asking for clarification from both candidates on serious issues when they would give answers that he wanted to hear more about? Was he fair to both?
I thought he was fair to both. I think I know where you're going.
I'm genuinely asking your opinion.
I thought he pushed back on Blake harder because of the shift in pre-primary positions to general elections positions, and so there was meat there for him to chew.
And that was the next part of the question was, did you think, though, that it was necessary to do that?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I think that was fair. That was a fair game for him to be able to do, because on certain issues, reproductive rights in particular, there has been a shift in Masters' positions.
Yeah, I mean, I think Masters has really tried to retool who he is and what he's all about, what he wants to do in the Senate since he won that primary on August 2nd. I mean, he was talking about privatizing Social Security. We haven't heard anything about that. He was talking about a personhood law at the federal level to ban abortions, and he's putting doctors in jail. He doesn't talk about that anymore. So, yeah, I think he's trying to do a makeover, a Blake-over. And, I think any good host, debate moderator, is going to try to dig into that stuff.
All right, in a moment, I want to talk about big moments. I want to talk about big moments for each candidate, what you think those were, and how well they went over. We'll do that coming here in a minute. We'll talk about all these issues. We have a couple more segments to go right here on Before You Vote. Coming up, we're looking at the big moments from the debate, plus what were the candidates' best and worst moments. Our analysis of the Arizona Senate debate continues. This is Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote, talking about the debate that happened this week between our Senate candidate, Senator Mark Kelly, and Blake Masters, the Republican challenger. Let's talk about big moments. We'll do good and bad on both candidates. So let's start with Mark Kelly, Senator Kelly. We'll start with you. Best moment in your mind for the senator?
I love the line he threw out. He goes, "We've all known guys like this," and then he had a paragraph of a guy, that know better than doctors, that know better than your financial advisor, and he reeled off a whole series of stuff that I had to chuckle at. I don't know that it was pre-planned. It felt like natural, but he delivered it really well. And
yeah, when he started the saying, I was listening, not watching, but I had a mental picture in my head at the same time when he did the we all know guys like this. So I agree with you in that regard. How about you?
That was one I was going to mention as well. Masters pretty interesting for a guy who comes from the fringes of the right, where he thinks the Unabomber is an interesting thinker. We should, really look at what he had to say. Pretty strange to say, our generals are a bunch of incompetents. I mean, that is not what you usually hear coming from, Republicans who come at it from a lot of respect for the military.
Well, and I want to get to that in a minute. That was one of the things I was going to talk about. And the rebuttal from Masters saying specifically General Milley and the things that were brought in the woke politics. So I want to get into that in a couple of moments. But it is interesting you brought that up, because I thought in that moment where the Libertarian candidate, Marc Victor, spoke up, he spoke up and defended the generals in general, talking about the Marines he knows. That was a moment I thought was fairly significant. So let's talk about worst moment. Start with you, worst moment for the senator.
I think he was a little nervous at the outset, and he tripped on his words a couple times, corrected himself, but I think he got his sea legs by the second or third question.
Okay. Yeah, I'd agree with that. He suffered at the outset because there was significant difficulty with the questions Ted was asking. I mean, the Biden administration has screwed up our immigration system, and they own the inflationary problems we have right now. And that whole first 20 minutes of the debate, Masters was really pinning him down forcefully on that. And I thought he looked nervous, and he acted, and he struggled on some things.
Any concern from you on the answer that was given about abortion when specifically Senator Kelly was asked about basically when life begins, or what do you support, the 15-week ban, and him saying, I support Roe v. Wade? Do you think that sounded like a non-answer?
No, I think Roe v. Wade's been the law of the land for so long that people understand that there are restrictions, and different states had different laws because there was restrictions are left to the states within a framework that Roe gives, and so I think he said he supported those restrictions.
Okay. Yeah, the interesting thing there was Masters was trying to paint him as an extremist. Sure. On his position, but Marc then did clarify. He goes, look, late-term abortion is rare, and it's only generally used in terms of fetal complications or complications with a child's future life. And so, he clarified that as a 1% or 2%. And what Masters is trying to do is paint him as an extremist in that regard, when it's not really the substance of the discussion.
And I think on both sides, that's where they came into this. Where both were calling each other an extremist, and I wonder how successful each person was in saying, I'm not, but he is. And I guess that all remains to be seen. So let's go to the other side. I want to go to the Blake Masters. Best moment for Blake.
I thought he opened really well. I thought he opened strong on the immigration issue, and he pinned him down on that. I think he made it uncomfortable for the senator, because the senator acknowledged some of the problems that the administration has had and that he's argued with them. But that's a hard territory for him to go, and I thought he opened really strong.
Yeah, I would say that too. He seemed very natural. And, when you haven't had the chance, I mean, it's not like presidential where there's 3 debates. This is the one. So we didn't know what to expect, and he seemed very comfortable in his own skin there.
So the worst moment for Blake Masters?
I thought it was really strange that he said that, voters should have to take a photocopy of their driver's license and put it in the ballot envelope in order for mail voting to be okay. I mean, first of all, he votes by mail. Second of all, something like 90% of Arizonans voted by mail. We have a good system, and it works. And, I get the need for security, but to make everybody who has a photocopier at their house to photocopy their driver's license, and then on the county recorder end, they're going to have to take that out and compare that to the real driver's license. Who's going to pay for that? I thought that was a kind of a wacky thing he proposed.
Yeah, along the same lines, I'd have to say when Ted asked him, was the 20 election, and he goes, well, he's the president. It's a dodge, right? And it's a dodge. And I thought that was a difficult moment for him to narrate, knowing where a majority of voters are.
But he did clarify at the end, and I was happy to see that he clarified at the end, saying he didn't see any evidence of a stolen election. So at least he said that out loud.
Right.
He did, but he had. But ever since the primary's over, he's been comfortable with that.
And I wonder what that's going to do with his voting base as well. So we got to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about some of the specific issues and bring up what we had talked about earlier about the military and some of the criticisms. So we'll get to some of that coming up in a minute. One more segment to go. Stick around. It's Before You Vote. Coming up, where do Masters and Kelly stand after the debate? We're going to look at how the debate might affect their chances in the election. This is Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Let's talk about what now. What now, performance, things of that nature. Where does this leave the candidates? Do you think, let's start with Blake Masters. Do you think that Blake Masters is better off after this debate than when he went into the debate?
Not substantially. Okay. I don't think, if you believe the polls, I happen to be looking at him, he's trailing. He needed a big night last night. He needed to land a blow. He needed a viral moment that he could take away from this, and I just don't think he got that. So I think, the narrative you and I are talking about, Rod, today, is going to be old news in a matter of 3 days, and the next news cycle is going to take over, and there's going to be something else going on.
Yeah, that's right. He didn't get the moment he needed. He is behind, and he needed to make some news.
So this is like most of the news cycle. Something's a big story for 24 hours, and then you don't really even think about it again. Is that what you think is going to happen here with this?
Well, this is candidates spar about inflation, abortion.
Yeah, I just don't think there's any legs to this discussion. What you want from a campaign perspective is you want a viral moment, right? You want somebody. Happened to work with Jan Brewer on her debate as her debate prep team. So I had 13 seconds of silence in order to.
She actually came in and did one of these shows with us and talked about that moment. But she was able to overcome it, obviously.
She did, but that was before the advent of real social media too.
Right.
I don't know how we would have handled that today, but neither of these two candidates got anything like that.
So let's talk about Marc Victor. Do you think he was able to do anything for himself to? Did he drag some votes? Did he get some votes?
I think he did. He was very engaging and warm. He also, Chuck talked before about, fiscally conservative, socially liberal. That's kind of the libertarian formula. But something else interesting, he really kind of sided more with Mark Kelly on the question of how should government work? How should our democracy function? Should we work together? Should we listen to each other, try to compromise and get things done? And he really came out strongly for that. And I think that there are going to be some Republicans who look for that, but maybe don't like where Blake is in terms of his attitude, and maybe they'll take another look at Marc Victor.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. He did well with his narrative last night. He did chide Masters for not being part of that. He did chide Kelly on other things. The military issue he sided with Mark on. And so overall, he adhered to sort of a center road that allowed, I think, people to come to him and not without being absolutely critical of either other candidate.
Have either of you done research on who watches a debate? Is it people that say, I'm a Mark Kelly fan and I want to see how well he does, I'm a Blake Masters fan, I want to watch how well he does, or is there a big number of undecided voters that are really trying to make a decision?
I think you have a mix. I think it's mostly partisans on either side. But, people like you, we're the freaks. We're the ones who live and eat and breathe this stuff. Most people are thinking about what are they having for dinner, what's going on at work, how are they going to spend their time, and they tune into something like this just trying to figure out who's running, who is this Blake Masters.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I mean, my old statement was nobody who watches a debate is looking to make up their mind. It attracts a very highly partisan crowd, and then the real value of it, as we've been talking about, is the narrative following the debate. Did somebody create a narrative? Did somebody land a where's the beef moment? Right. Did somebody land a blow that damaged somebody else? And that I just didn't see that last night.
Is there data though out there in polling after a debate of people specifically who are undecided that's reliable?
I don't think so. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. You could do that.
I'm just saying. I think that would be interesting. We go in with predisposed ideas because we know these candidates in our own mind. But people that really don't, would it be valuable to know what they think? I
mean, you see that in cable news networks. Sometimes they'll do a focus group. They'll do a focus group of undecided voters, and they'll put them in a room. They'll let them listen to and then they'll go interview each one of them. I mean, that's an interesting experiment, but it's hard to extrapolate much beyond that because people's opinions are people's opinions, and they're going to influence, and they live within a social network, and everybody sort of makes up their own mind on that.
All right, so last question is, what does each of the candidates do now? We'll start with you. What does Mark Kelly do now going forward to Election Day?
Well, we've got 32 days to go, so he's going to be all over Arizona, talking to people, listening to people. He's got a small plane. He visits communities all over the place. He doesn't just, spend his time in Pima County and Maricopa County, but he really gets out and wants to hear from people all over Arizona.
I'd be interested to know what you think Blake Masters needs to do. If you were advising Blake Masters, what would you say he needs to do moving forward?
Resign?
Honestly. What would your advice be?
My advice to Blake Masters would be to give some straight answers to where he was in the primary.
You teed him up. You teed him up.
Where he was in the primary to where he's gotten in the general. Like, I mean, does he honestly believe that Biden became president because big tech wouldn't let the Hunter Biden laptop story get enough airtime? That was a little kooky. I mean, I just, he's obviously an extraordinarily bright guy.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's talking down to people sometimes.
So what do you think? What do each candidate, what do they do going forward? What do they have to do?
I think, well, Blake's having some challenges on the fundraising side, and he's getting outgunned television-wise. So he needs to go use this opportunity to go raise money to prove to people that he, and get his message out there to prove that he has street viability and that he can win. So he's got to take away some time to go do that. Narratively, continue to push on immigration and on inflation. Those are killer issues to Democrats right now, and that's where he's got to go.
I appreciate both of you. All right, we are out of time. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time. We'll be back in a minute on Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. Thank you to Chuck Coughlin and Rod McLeod. And remember, if you miss an interview or want to rewatch any of them, head over to aztv.com/vote. Remember, October 11th is the last day to register to vote in the general election. Next week, we are covering the debate turned interview with Kari Lake. We'll be sitting down with political strategist Chad Campbell once again, and Chuck Coughlin will join us. So make sure you join us next week right here on Before You Vote.